Hey there, thank you so much for listening to Something Super Spiritual. My name is Jeffrey Peck, and I am a psychic medium. If you are seeking conversation with loved ones on the other side, or discussion about spirituality, life after life, and anything in between, join me as we discuss all things spirit. We are collectively experiencing a spiritual awakening right now and recognizing that we are much, much more than we once believed. We don't die, and life doesn't end. We are eternal spiritual beings living in this crazy 3D virtual world of existence. Let's talk about it. Well, Stacey, thank you so much for being here with me on the Something Super Spiritual podcast. I'm so happy to have you with me.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I'm very thrilled to be here too.
Let's start at the beginning. What was life like for you as a child with regard to spirit, your experiences, your upbringing?
Okay, so I was raised Catholic. I lived in a great state of anxiety and fear, not having an understanding at all of the spirit world. I just knew I was painfully shy, and I was afraid a lot, especially at night. And I was very much into solitary play. I was very comfortable with my own company, and I had a huge imagination. And I was just, they were like boogeymen for me. I was scared.
Yeah.
But again, at the time, there was no understanding or realization of anything like that. I could tell you also, from a very young age, I had knowings. So I just knew things. And I also felt like I had just a sense of things that certainly weren't consistent with my age or my life experience. I just had knowledge, sort of. I don't know how to say it in it. I don't mean it in an arrogant way.
Right.
I just had a sense of a wisdom about myself. And I knew, even as a young person, it wasn't based on anything of my life. It's sort of like I came into this world with it.
Interesting.
And that's what it was like for me. And then as I moved into my adolescence, I was really, again, I got tired of being afraid. So I really made a conscious effort to move myself out of that.
Yeah.
Then I really got into, anything psychic or metaphysical or anything kind of woohoo, I was really into. Like I'm talking 12, 13.
Oh, so that interest hit you early on.
Oh yeah. So I was into all that. I really considered seriously studying parapsychology in college. And then I thought, how would I support myself?
Yeah.
So I was into all things sort of, at the time you were on the periphery of things, now it's much more mainstream, but back then I was a little unusual, but deep, and I was just into all of that stuff, psychic and all that kind of thing.
So in your teenage years, when you started to head that direction, how did that play with respect to your Catholicism and your parents? Did they have anything to say about any of that?
No, because at the time, it wasn't like I had any idea that this is what I would be doing. It was just a fascination and intrigue. It really titillated my mind. Anything with psychic, anything with time travel, all these different kind of unusual topics fascinated me. I did a lot of reading. I read a lot as a young person, and as an adolescent, I was a really big reader, and I would read really science fiction and all that kind of stuff. It just was like, I ate it up. But again, not having any awareness of any future telling that I would be doing it. It was just an interest.
So then what happened then in your journey that you felt that calling? You sensed the synchronicities lining up. What was the impetus that you just...
So it didn't again, I like to say that mediumship found me. It wasn't anything that was on my radar. Certainly different things were interesting to me, and I was paying attention to them. But I turned 40 and my grandmother died suddenly. And 10 days after she passed, she came to me in a vivid dream. And I knew in that moment it was a dream visit. And I was very consciously aware that because I was very close with my grandmother. And I was very aware of the next day that my grief had lightened. And I thought, God, that's just incredible. And my daughter at the time was 3. And I said, she called her Big Nan, because my mother's nanny. She was Big Nanny because she was my nanny. I said, I had a dream of Big Nanny. She said, so did I. I said, really? What'd she say? She's fine. My mother had it. My sister had it. But
oh my gosh.
They woke up afraid, and I immersed myself in the moment. And so I'll tell you the story. My grandmother, she couldn't tell if you called my grandmother, she couldn't tell the difference between my sister Lori or my voice. So she would say, Lori Stace. So I'm sound asleep, and in my mind, the telephone rings, and I answer it in my mind. And I go, hello? And she goes, Lori Stace. And I'm like, Nanny, I want you to know I'm fine. Oh my God, Nanny, I love you. I miss you so much. And she says, I just want you to know I'm just fine. And I'll call you again if I can.
Oh,
boom. And I woke up.
Oh, it gives me chilly bumps from head to toe. Oh, that's so beautiful.
It was a moment. So then, over the next 10 years, anyone in my family who passed, they would come to me in dreams. And it was like, cool. I thought it was cool. It was interesting. It was fascinating. It became every day, like not every day, but it became the norm for me. Mm-hmm. And then I came to the awareness that when I was falling asleep and when I was waking up, I could sort of tap into something. And I was able to connect with what I thought were my guides. And so I did that for quite a while. And then it began to rev up for me. And then one day I just knew I was connecting with my husband's father, who died when he was 13. And I just knew it. And I told him all about it. And then it just like the floodgates opened.
Yep.
And then I was like pinging off like a ping pong ball. I had no control of it. I couldn't, it was wild because I couldn't walk into a mall. I'd hear names. I'd look at someone and I'd hear names and father, I would just, and it was like, I was getting overwhelmed with it.
Sure.
But yet I thought it was the coolest thing ever.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Okay. So before I forget, I want to go back to your dreams. So not everybody receives those dream visitations regardless of how open they might be. I've so many people who are mediums or psychics and they say, I don't get it like that. I don't receive it like that. And a lot of people are asking, well, how do I know? How do I know? So would you explain like how you know? What is the difference? What is the aha that was real?
Well, first of all, there's a qualitative difference in the feel of it. It's very distinct, very clear. In a regular dream, you're meandering. Oh, I'm over here. I'm down there. I see my grandmother across the street. There's a meandering to regular dreams.
Yes.
This is distinct, clear, very short. And it's sort of like you don't forget them. Like I would wake up after each one. So over the years, my grandmother would come to me in dreams. And then all my family members who passed, and then people I didn't know well started to come. Like I knew I had a guy I knew who passed in 9/11, and he started to come to me in my dreams. And I'm like, why are you here in my dreams?
Yeah.
And it was like really interesting. I had 3 dreams of him. And if you want me to share it, it's because it's very fascinating and interesting.
Yes, please. Yeah, absolutely.
So the first dream was I saw him playing hockey and he didn't look well and he had a brace on his knee. And the second dream I saw him, and it took me years to understand this. He was like, all these people were like filing out of a building and he walked past me and I tapped him on the shoulder. I'm like, why are you in my dream? Why aren't you in Lisa's dream, which is his wife?
Yes.
And he says to me, I try, but she can't see me. Boom, I wake up. The third one, he looked beautiful. It was like lit up. And I said, do you want me to let Lisa know you're okay? And he said, we have a relationship now. It's not this way anymore. It's this way. Okay. Again, I don't know anything. I don't know nothing. I don't know anything.
Right.
So the next day I'm driving to the mall and I feel so moved to go to this one store first. And I walk in the store and his wife is there.
Oh, of course she is.
And so I've came to learn that he used to play hockey and he had a knee issue and he was going to be having surgery on his knee the week after 9/11, and that no, she had not had him come to her dreams. And so a lot of the information that I received, she was able to validate for me.
Yes.
And then, so that kind of like, well, I'm getting people that aren't like, for me, it was normal to have my family, but now I was getting other people. Like, what's that about?
Sure.
And so it just began to sort of, for me, it sort of started to rev up.
Mm-hmm. And
then I hit 50. And so I'm sharing my age a little bit. That's okay.
That's okay.
And I said the floodgates opened. So then I felt like I needed to understand it because it was happening all the time and I couldn't control it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided, with the guidance of a friend of mine, to go to a medium. And I did. And Awesome. He basically brought through my father-in-law and then my grandmother. And she told me that I would be doing this for the rest of my life and she would be helping me there.
Oh, awesome.
And so then
I love that you brought up how you were bombarded with it. Because I get those questions all the time too. Do you feel it all the time? Do you sense it all the time? When you go to parties, whatever? How did you start to control that piece in your development?
My training of it, when I began to train and take classes. I remember my first teacher in the first class, because I used to get it in the middle of the night. They'd wake me up. Mm-hmm. And she said, you have to set, I don't know if you know Rita Berkowitz. She's a wonderful medium. She's out of Massachusetts. She's called The Spirit Artist. Yes. And she wrote the wonderful book, The Complete Idiot's Guide to Spirit Communication. But at the time, I didn't know who she was. I traveled to Massachusetts from New York to take her class. I felt very guided to her. Yeah. And that's a whole nother synchronistic story. And so that's the first thing she taught me was to set boundaries. You wouldn't let your friend call you in the middle of the night unless it was an emergency.
Totally.
So you set the boundary, and then my training really sort of allowed me to get an understanding that it was under my control. Mm-hmm. And you set your boundaries and spirit does respond. Absolutely.
So you mentioned your training. What were you guided to after Rita?
I stayed with Rita she had this 1-day class like every couple of months, and I would drive out to Massachusetts. I'm talking 4 hours.
Oh, wow.
And I would take a class with her, and she kept telling me to go to Janet Nohavec. She's like, go to Janet Nohavec. She's closer to you. And I'm like, no, I okay, but I need to be with you. Like, I knew I need to, again, I had knowings. I just knew. I know I'm supposed to be here first because her classes were small and she was nurturing, and I felt like a fish out of water.
Yes.
I didn't have any friends who did I did not have a community.
Yes.
And so for me, having a community was vital. So then after I finished with her, I started over at the Journey Within, and I took, Janet had a sequence of classes that I took. And then after I did that, I felt confident enough to join her Monday night group, which was a weekly development closed group that you don't find anywhere else. And we sort of all grew up together. And I did that for about 7 years.
Oh, wow. Journey Within is one of my bucket list. I have to get out there and meet her as well. I've read her book and, of course, watched a lot. And a lot of the people that we mutually know, all work there, develop there. She's an amazing lady.
Yes. And it was incredible. And again, it created a community for me because I needed it.
Yeah. Oh, I absolutely believe that. We do need that. We need that. Yeah. And I was just talking with a friend of mine just recently, in March, my partner and I went to London, and he had a couple things to do out there. And while I was out there, I met up with a couple of my friends that I met at Arthur Findlay. And it was just beautiful to be with those like-minded, totally get it friends.
Yes.
You know, it's not to take away from the close friends that I have in life, but I didn't realize that I was lonely. Like, I didn't realize that I was
lonely road.
Yeah.
Even in the community, it's a lonely road. You're doing it alone, with the support of people.
Yes.
So it could be lonely. And, I came from being a wife and a mother, I was raising my kids and, working part-time, and all of a sudden it bombarded me. So I needed to find people. I needed to talk about it.
Uh-huh.
I needed to understand it.
Yes.
I needed to learn, because I approached it, my background, I have a master's in social work. And and throughout my career doing that, I had a supervisor. I had somebody I could talk to about what was happening.
Yeah.
I took classes, I trained. So I approached it in the same way. There's got to be people out there that know more than me, and I got to learn from them.
Yes.
I got to find them. I got to meet them. I have to learn from them. And I needed people to bounce off my experiences, because, I needed an understanding of it for myself.
Completely. And it's that understanding. Something's happening. You've been shown the validations with the people that you've been talking with, but it's that understanding that is just
for yourself.
Yes, that you understand what's happening within and how you're receiving the information. And while you were moving through this period in your development, what were your hurdles? Like, what was challenging for you? What were your biggest ahas in your yeah?
My biggest hurdle was self-confidence. I lived in that space of self-doubt for years.
Yes.
And I got so sick of being there. So sick of it.
It's so true.
My other challenge, I would say, is speaking in front of groups, because I was never comfortable as a public speaker. So I had to overcome that, as well as working the platform.
Yes.
But my biggest hurdle was getting comfortable with Stacey, and trusting in Stacey, and being comfortable with myself within it. And that took me years, and I just got sick and tired of being there. And so I made the conscious decision to move the energy, and to, I said to myself, you're going to fake it till you make it.
Yeah. Yeah. That it's so true. A few years ago, I was talking with a friend of mine, and I said something similar. I was like, I am so tired of being afraid. I am so tired of being afraid. I gotta move this, And I too struggled with that self-doubt. And I was afraid to open my mouth, and I was afraid to say what I was getting for fear of being wrong or looking like a fraud I was talking with another friend of mine at one point, and we were talking about finding your voice within this, finding your voice. And you can't find your voice unless you open your mouth. And that's the scariest thing, but that's what you got to do, right?
Like, for me, it wasn't that I was afraid. For me, it was, am I good enough?
Yes.
So it's our own personal issues that 100%. Sort of rear their head. For me, I wanted to do it I wanted to be good at it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so, that fear of not being good enough was my biggest struggle. And, I just got so sick of being there, and I did some very concrete things to try and move it. And certainly it's in the doing that we learn, and it's in the doing that we move through that energy. And I tell my students now, like, it's not a destination.
Mm-hmm.
You can visit, but you can't stay there.
Yes, it's so true. Oh, that's amazing.
For me, I lived in it for years.
Mm-hmm.
And then I moved myself out, thank gosh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in your development, there are those teachers that are placed in our path. When the student is ready, the teacher arrives. Mm-hmm. Who was most influential for you? And it
Well,
could be a few, you know, I've got a few during different periods in my growth.
exactly. That's what I was just going to say. Like, certainly, you know, I can tell you that Rita was incredibly important for me. And after the first class, again, I'm coming out of this, you know, I have no experience here. I drove to Massachusetts. I took a class for the day. And I remember at the end of the class, she came up to me and very quietly, she said, you know, you're very good. Now, it wasn't that I needed to hear that I was very good, because I was willing to put in the work, but for her to validate that gave me the impetus to continue. I needed to hear that. So that was one moment that was really important to me. And certainly finding the Journey Within and Janet's supportive community was invaluable for me, you know, to have that place. And then I've mentored with Lynn Probert for 2 years, and that was just so important for my development. And it wasn't that, you know, most of my work with her, was really me going in with my issues and discussing. We talked probably, that's all we did. I think I read her 3 times. I did a psychic reading, a mediumship reading, and a soul reading. Otherwise, I went in with my list of what was going on. And it was just bouncing thoughts and ideas. And I grew up with her. I really did. I grew into myself with her. So, but I could name millions of, you know, I love Brian and Simon. I don't know if you studied, I love them. That was like a graduate course in psychology, sociology, and philosophy. It was just so good for me. And I loved working with them. And I really enjoyed Chris Drew, which is a different sort of lighthearted, you know, playful teacher.
Totally.
But I learned from all. Every opportunity for me is an opportunity to learn, and I've enjoyed every single moment of it. So, but those are the key moments for me, like having the community, getting that validation very early on. That gave me the, you know, I'll stay with this now. I'll stay with it.
Yeah, completely. You know, I've been working with Lynn too for a couple of years, mentoring, you know, over the Zoom. And I know exactly what you're talking about. Like most of last year were like counseling sessions with her rather than doing exercises. It was like all therapy sessions talking about my blocks and my fears and my challenges and hearing, you know, what she had to say about all of that, like you were talking about.
Yeah, I worked with her for 2 years, and I just finished with her. I want to say in February, and I felt like, and I was like teary, and she said, well, if you need me, you can always book one session. I said, oh, good. Cause I feel like I'm a toddler now, and I can I still have we're still attached a little bit.
Yes.
If I need you, you're there for me. And I felt like a little bit better with that, because things come up in your work. And now that so much of our work is on Zoom, like we're not really in a community, it's a different kind of community now, that to have that, and know that I can use her still. And I have, and I've, because a couple of different things have happened for me this year, and I wanted to run them by her, you know. You know, new opportunities arose, like the teaching with Janet. I never anticipated that. And so I wanted to talk to her about it.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're in New York. A lot of people ask me about Lilydale. Have you been to Lilydale?
I've never.
Do you have any?
I've never been to Stansted either. You know, the wonderful thing about the Journey Within is all those tutors came to her. So I was able to.
True. And that's what I was going to bring that around, because it's like all of those people have worked with Janet on, at some point.
So we would get Brian and Simon twice a year. The Uptons would come for 2 weeks. And now don't forget, in the Monday night class, you know, you had that every week.
Yeah.
The tutors that came in for the weekend would teach us Monday night as a courtesy, just for fun.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
You know, Tony Stockwell came twice a year. I mean, she had her regular people. I'm trying to think who else. They all do. They would all come regularly. So you had to pick. So you can't do them all, right?
Right.
You would have to pick. Oh my God, what am I going to do this year? Because there was this plethora of options.
Yes.
What am I going to do? Who do I want to study with this year?
A lot of questions that I receive, and I'm going to ask you this. You and I know that mediumship sessions with people are a springboard of healing for our sitters in front of us.
Mhm.
Can you think and tell us about anyone that you just were in such awe with at the end, that you literally witnessed your sitter in front of you, like release this pain, this weight, this burden?
I mean, not one springs to mind, but I could tell you for me, the best moments are when you get feedback after, and you get an email or someone in touch with you, and they may have not understood something.
Yes.
Now all of a sudden it registers with them. I'm trying to think. I mean, not one is calling to mind. I mean, they all are, in small and big ways, they're all touching someone. And I really feel like, for me, I trust in the spirit world to give them exactly what they need,
Completely.
So I can't speak to one particular reading. I just know, for me, the fun ones and the ones that like impact me are the ones that you get that feedback after, in other words, like they didn't even know.
Yeah.
And now they
the emails that come a couple days after the readings are gifts.
Like I recently did one, and I was reading for a local doctor, and it was a gentleman, and I don't often get gentlemen, but it was, and I brought through his mom, and I forget who else. But at the end, I said, your mom wants to thank you for pulling those strings for her at the end of her life. And he says, I didn't pull any strings. I said, oh, okay, I'm going to leave it with you. I ended the reading. It was right at the end. He emails me like not 10 minutes later. He says, when my mother passed, I wrote a song called Pulling Those Strings, and I sang it at her funeral.
Oh.
And I thought, oh, that's amazing.
Oh, that is so beautiful.
And he was so excited. He was so excited. Like, that's a moment. Like, that moment I'll remember. I'll remember that moment
forever.
Those kinds of things. When you get a reading that moves you, the healing is always present. So I can't speak to seeing the transition, because I think it really sort of percolates in them, and there's a an immediate reaction, and I think it settles in with them, and there's sort of an integration of it, and that may take time for them. I really believe that it impacts them, not just during the reading, but it follows them. But that kind of moment for me is sort of really interesting,
Completely. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm going to ask you another question that I get often. When you're out and about, okay, well, first of all, right now, there are so many paranormal shows. It's popular. It's on the pulse. When you're out and about, and I'm just wondering, like, do you sense and feel spirits? Say you're at a 400-year-old building that's a restaurant. You're sitting there. Do you sense and feel anybody around you? If you do, I mean, do you feel like it's just residual, like an energetic fingerprint, or do you feel it's conscious? I get this question often because I feel a lot of energy everywhere I go, and I sense things and I see things, but
yeah, I don't know why I don't. I'll tell you that. I don't. I think coming from a background in mental health, and I worked in mental health for 15 years, and you really needed to have good boundaries there.
Yeah.
You did. And so I have really good boundaries. So I'm not really walking around. There might be a time or two, but I will tell you, the only time that I remember it really being so like impactful to me, that I was in London, and I was at the Tower of London, and you can go to one of the rooms where they had the when they would I'm forgetting what the word is, the torture room.
Okay.
where they would torture people. And I remember going down it and I couldn't breathe and I had to get right out.
Yeah.
That's the only time really for me. So otherwise, I'm just going about. There might be a moment, well, like I may become aware of spirit, but I just sit with it and and I don't do anything with it. But I don't feel, I don't know why, but that's how it works for me.
Yeah.
I'm going about my day, and when I'm working, I'm working, and when I'm practicing, I'm practicing, and when I'm sitting with spirit, I'm sitting with spirit. Otherwise, it doesn't happen to me a lot.
Yeah.
But that one time overwhelmed me. I couldn't breathe. I had to get right out of that room.
Yeah, I totally get that. With your knowledge, your experience, your personal experience with spirit in your development, in your growth, with your readings, what do you think happens when we die?
I think in the moment, I think it's probably one of the most peaceful things that we'll ever experience. I think we're just enveloped in that, that beautiful, loving space, when we merge back into it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think. Very early on, I had a really interesting experience. My husband's cousin was dying, and we were all sitting, he was unconscious, and we were all there, and I'm the one who watched him pass. And I remember thinking, like, why am I the one here for this?
Right.
I think all these moments are preparing you for where you're going. I really believe that. And I thought it was one of the most peaceful things I had ever experienced. Like, here's a man who was dying of a brain tumor, but it was just peaceful. And I think we're just really we merge back into the wholeness of it all. And honestly, I really feel like our brains are not advanced enough to really comprehend it.
I agree.
Really do. I think we're just really scratching the surface of what is really going on. But there's a merging of it. And, that's how I feel. Like if you were to drop something in the water and you just merge back in with it, I really feel like in that moment, we merge back in to that loving place, whatever it is, whatever your conceptualization of it is. And I think it's an alternative dimension that's sort of overlaid, I think that's how I conceptualize it. And I feel like we're all welcomed home. And I feel like our people are there, because recently that started to happen in my readings. Like I see the people who are waiting there for them, and all of that's been happening over the last 6 months. I'll see the people who have passed are with the one who's passing,
Yes.
And it's part of the information, as long as you sort of like have a solid reading happening there. And all of a sudden that's been coming into my work, and it's really incredible. So I think we're welcomed home by those we love and our pets, and grand welcoming, and we merge back into the wholeness of all of it.
It's a homecoming party.
Yeah, I envision it as like a really like just a blending in back in. And it's beautiful.
Yes.
And it's beautiful.
When you hear people talking about lost souls, and I'm doing that in quotes, when you hear people talk about lost souls, whether they died from a tragic accident or a tragic, say murder or just something, horrendous, what do you say about, quote, lost souls?
That's not in my belief system.
Yeah.
So I don't experience that. I really truly believe that we interpret what we're experiencing through the lens of our understanding.
Yes.
And if you believe in that sort of thing, then that's how you're going to interpret it. I've never had that experience.
I haven't either.
So, my other thinking around that is, if you're to believe in that sort of thing, or they need help moving to that space or crossing over, I really feel like you're talking about God dropping the ball to a degree and not really doing his job very well. And that's not what my understanding is either. I think we're with an intelligence and a divine intelligence way beyond our comprehension.
Yes.
Why would anybody need our help, our feeble help, when they have that whole divine, incomprehensible intelligence to love and support them?
And you know what? And that was my question too. You know, if we have guardians and guides and God and our loved ones, where are they if we're supposedly lost? Why aren't they coming to help us? Like, where are they? Yeah, I've asked those questions too. Yeah.
I really believe, though, that people like to visit.
Yeah,
They may
agreed.
come back.
Yeah.
And so if you have someone who's visiting and if you conceptualize it that in the spirit world, there's no time, and they come back, and for them, it may be 3 seconds, and here it may be 300 years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you say that house is haunted because the guy's visiting his house.
Yes.
For it may be a moment. And for us, it could be eons. We don't know. So I can't speak to it. I know the people who have that belief in that and say they do that work, they hold on to it real tight, and there's no movement on it. So I give you yours and allow me mine.
Absolutely.
I've never experienced anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Who inspires you?
Oh, man. Who inspires me? I'm going to tell you this. My grandmother in the spirit world really inspires me. My grandmother lived a very hard life. She was very independent. And she lived a long life, and she passed suddenly. She was completely independent to the moment of her passing. She inspires me. My daughter inspires me. She really does. My family inspires me. My parents inspire me. My daughter, she just graduated law school, and she maneuvered through that and COVID. To me, it was like really daunting what she did and accomplished. So that inspires me. People inspire me.
Yeah.
You inspire me.
Oh, thank you.
Can't speak to one thing or one person. Janet inspires me.
Sure.
She really does. I mean, her commitment to spirit, that is inspiring to me.
Yes.
And we've all had to get to that place where I'm going to commit to this.
Yeah.
It's the biggest commitment I've ever made other than my family.
Yep.
It's heart and soul, commitment, time, money.
Yep. All of the above.
All of it. And, I've said yes. I said yes.
Thank you for saying yes.
And I talk about, I followed the breadcrumbs. This would happen. Yes. This happens. Yes. This happens. Yes. This happens. Yes.
Yeah.
I just want, and through all of that, I want to be the best I can possibly be.
100%.
And absolutely. I say yes, I'll figure it out. Yes, I'm doing it. Any
Beautiful.
opportunity. Yes. Janet reached out. Would you teach this? Yes, I'll do it. Yeah, I'll do that church service. Yes, I'll work, right now I'm working with moms who have lost sons. Yeah, I'll work with that group. You just say yes.
Yes.
And
so in you saying yes, then how did you overcome the fear of speaking in front of groups when you were first asked, will you do this platform with me? Or, how did you move through that?
Well, first of all, the beauty of the Journey Within, and, you're in this weekly development group, and it's closed, right? So we all are so trusting and supportive of each other. Now, we started working on platform. We worked on platform over a year with Janet. You would do a month, groups of 3 a month. Every week you'd be in a group of 3, went to group of 5, do that for whatever, went to bigger group, do whatever.
Yep.
Then she would break up the class in half and get in front of, and then eventually we did the whole class, and we had to get literally on the platform of the church. And then she does student demonstrations, and she would fill the church with the public. Yep. And you'd get up there and you'd do it, and you would do it.
Yep.
And so I have the wonderful advantage of having small incremental steps and getting comfortable at each one.
Yes.
And, I'm very comfortable doing them on Zoom. And I do big ones on Zoom with this group of moms, like we do like 300 people.
Wow.
But if I had to do 300 people in person, I don't know about I'm sure I'd be able to do it, but I would certainly have to manage my nerves. I think that's part of what you need to learn to do.
Yep.
Is manage yourself. And whatever you need to do to get yourself into that quietness, into the space of you, that quiet centered space of you got to figure that out.
Totally.
You can't get up there and let your nerves show. So you can be nervous. Mm-hmm. You just have to make it an inside job.
Totally. Yep.
So and then, each time it becomes more and more comfortable. Oh, I succeeded there. I can do it again. Yeah. So you have history behind you.
Yes. Yeah. It's very similar to how I started to get in front of people, because that was my biggest fear too, is getting in front of groups and opening my mouth. And I started with a group of 4, and then I went to 5, and then I went to 6, and then I went to 9. And yeah, that's exactly how I did it too.
And again, you're mastering it. You're mastering it as you're going. Yes. So, the church was a great environment to learn all that. And again, even in these student demonstrations, which we did, probably 4 or 5 throughout the years, each year, you just became comfortable in it, and it was a supportive place. Yes. And then you would get feedback. You would get feedback from Janet. You'd get feedback from the tutors. Yes. And so it helped you to improve. And she would videotape them sometimes, and you get the video. There's no better teaching tool than to watch yourself. Yep. You got to watch yourself back. I'll never forget the first time I was videotaped. I said the same sentence every sentence. Like whatever it was. And I thought, oh, that's got to change. Yes. And so you begin to work on your language. There's more to mediumship than just getting the information and getting a yes. Mm-hmm. There's so much more. So you learn to use your language to describe it, and, and you allow yourself to just grow within it. Mm-hmm. You're really growing within it. Yeah.
So what do you have to say to those who are listening? There are going to be a lot of people who aren't mediums, but really curious and open and needing to hear from their loved ones. And there are going to be a lot of people who are starting to feel and open up to their own senses. So what words of wisdom would you like to impart to those groups?
Well, I think for those who are early in their development, to just keep going. I don't know anyone who has not experienced being self-conscious, feeling doubtful about themselves, questioning themselves, feeling like they want to give it all up. I don't know anyone who hasn't moved through that. Right. So what you're experiencing, if you are feeling any of those, it's completely normal. Yes. We all move through those periods, because you're getting to an understanding of who you are and what your place is within it all. For those who, who aren't developing and may have doubts, I suggest you just suspend your disbelief for just a little while.
Just a moment.
Just see what happens. Just see what happens. Our minds are tricky beasts. They want to control the dialogue, and they want to control the scenario. So you really need to suspend your disbelief and just allow yourself and see what happens for you, because there's always signs, there's always these moments, but our minds want to explain it away. Yes. They do. And you have to sort of suspend that dialogue and move more into a heart space. Yes. And see what possibly can happen, because it's magical. There's magic.
miraculous every
And
step of the way.
if you're very analytical, or you're just, whatever it is that's making you resistant to open yourself up to that, just suspend it for a little while and see what could possibly happen. That's what I would say.
Beautiful. And Stacey, where can people find you? Where are you on your Facebook, Instagram, wherever?
I am on all of that. My website is stacydecea.com. I have an office at Turning Point Healing Arts and Education Center located in Ridgefield, Connecticut. You can find me there. On Bob Olsen's Best Psychic Directory. You can find me there. You can email me, stacey@stacydecea.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. You can reach me through all of those venues. Stacey Decea, CSW. CSW is a certified social worker. I was certified.
Okay.
So I use that as a credential because I earned it. One. Yes. My background is in social work, counseling, and all of that. So, and I really do feel that all of my education and all of my experiences there have really enhanced what I do now. They're very akin to each other. They really are. Although I'm not practicing any kind of psychological social work services, but that experience really has helped me to hone what I'm doing now. I offer, I do teach a class on Sunday nights through hydesville.org. You can find me there. And I have a mentorship program for those who can, you would need to be able to make a contact to do the program that I offer. It's one-on-one. And it's, I've worked with students around the world really in that, doing that. And again, it's one of those things, like if you told me, again, it presented itself. So if you told me I would be doing platform when I started, I'd say, you're kidding.
Yes.
If you told me I would be teaching, I would say, no way.
Right.
If you told me I'd be teaching a class with Janet Nohavec, I'd say, you're crazy.
Yes.
But the opportunities come and you say yes, and you keep moving and you keep doing it. So you can find me in all those places.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Stacey, thank you so much for being here. I really,
it's been a treat. It's my favorite topic.
Yes, me too.
I love to talk about it. And it's a great passion, and I love it. It's very joyful for me, really. And again, it came to me later. If it had come to me any earlier, I could not have committed the time necessary.
I think there's more and more of us with this experience where it's coming later in life. Because same thing with me,
when I reflected back though on my life, you could see it was always present.
Yeah.
It was the timing wasn't there for me.
Completely. Yeah.
I knew I wanted to raise my kids, and when it really ramped up, my kids were old enough to take care of themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Couldn't have done it any sooner. So, but it is a joy and it's a pleasure and an honor, really.
Beautiful.
To do it. It's great to be with you and talk to you again and spend time. It's really it's amazing. It's not that we're amazing. No, it is amazing. We're just tapping into it.
Yep.
So it is incredibly amazing. And we're able to be there a lot.
Well, that's just it. We get to participate in miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle.
Yes.
And there are some of those miracles, those readings, where I come out and I just have to cry for like 5 minutes straight. I just have to cry in just joy and gratitude and wow,
Yeah, I did one yesterday, and I said to the mother, I'm doing a lot of work with moms who've lost sons. I said, you've got a little slice of heaven that you've created for your son. There's an angel. I described this whole space. And you have a bench there. You sit there with your son. It's a little slice of heaven. And she talked about it, like she had created in her house in Maine. She's got the angel and all these flowers, and there's a bench, and it was clear as day. And he talked about how it was a slice of heaven that she can meet him there.
Oh,
it was really, really beautiful. That's beautiful. We are moved.
So moved.
When we're moved, it's a really good reading. Mm-hmm. That was beautiful. Mm-hmm. Not that we are.
No.
It was. The experience was. And we got to partake in it.
Completely.
So there's a lot of beautiful moments.
Yes. Thank you again for listening to the Something Super Spiritual podcast. If you know someone who would enjoy this episode, please do share it with a friend. For show notes, links, and to purchase a mediumship reading, my website is somethingsuperspiritual.com. You can also easily subscribe and follow the show on your favorite app, sign up for my newsletter for bonus content, and to keep the conversation going, you can easily join the Facebook community. It's all right there at the website, somethingsuperspiritual.com. Signing off for now, namaste.